Hey guys, this is a tutorial on how to remove flare from glasses in portraits. Now, flare can be caused by reflections when you're shooting with daylight, or it can be a reflection caused by flash. Now, the easiest way to get rid of flare is to change the angle that the light is hitting the glass. And the best way and the quickest way to do that is to just ask your model to tip their head down slightly, and that will eliminate glare in most cases. So, having said that, there are certain types of glasses or certain types of lighting situations, particularly where you might be lighting with flash, where this isn't an option. So you can see here in this shot where I've got a beauty dish just above my model's head, the glasses did pick up some flare, and I couldn't get the tilt right, and so you're going to pick up flare. So in this instance, the way and it's not the simplest way, but the workaround is to shoot your model and then get them to hold still and remove the glasses, and then you can merge the two shots and mask out the area where the flare was, and you're left with a clean shot of the person wearing the glasses. And that's in the situation where they're wearing a particular type of glasses that seem to like attract the flare. The final option where you might have is where you're shooting the shot and you actually forget, or you don't notice because the flare may not be that obvious on the back of your camera screen, but when you get your shot into Lightroom or whatever post-production software you're using, you notice that you've got this little bit of flare, and that can also be removed using the clone stamp, where we can borrow a part, and this works particularly well if you've only got flare on one eye. You can actually clone from one side and bring it over to the other, and there's a couple of tricks involved to get that looking right. So I'll show you those two other options now. If you've got a situation where you just can't seem to eliminate the flare, the lighting style or the particular glasses, just all the little tilting tricks just don't work, then you can try this as a last option. It's a bit involved, but it might be a good workaround for those people that you just can't seem to get rid of that flare. So basically, you've got to ask your model, and it does interrupt the flow of the shoot, so it's not ideal. You set your model up, you've got the angle of the head the way you want it, you've got the vibe going, and you've got that light in the eyes. Get them to hold still and take the frame with the glasses, and then without them moving at all, carefully remove the glasses, or ask someone to carefully remove the glasses. So they really haven't moved at all, and hopefully the expression is the same. And you've got these two almost identical images, although one is with glasses and one is without. So the way that you work with that in Photoshop is so what I'm in Lightroom is I'm going to select my two images together. I'm going to right click and go up to edit in Photoshop, and edit with the Lightroom adjustments. Alright, so there they are. Here's the no glasses, and here's the shot with the glasses, and I'm going to merge the images. Now, I can take one and put it on top of the other, but just by dragging the two across, and then I can try and align those two shots. Or I can come in here into layers. If you don't see it, you can come up here and go into layers. And there's my layers palette. So I've got my top layer and my bottom layer. Now what I want is I want the layer with the glasses on the top, and the layer with the without the glasses on the bottom. So here's my glasses layer on top of my no glasses layer, and you can see that they're fairly well lined up. Now what I'm going to do is add a layer mask to that, and so now that I've got my layer mask, I can non-destructively edit out the area with the flare, and hopefully underneath I'll have the eyes where there is no flare. So I'll be able to clean up, leave the edge of the glasses there, but have this new set of eyes that doesn't have flare, and it should look a whole lot better. So that's the layer mask icon there. I've created a layer mask. I'm coming over to my brush tool. I'm going to have black selected as my foreground color, and anywhere I now brush with black is going to reveal the layer that's underneath. I want to make sure that I've got my hardness set to 0, my mode is normal, opacity 100%, and I'm going to have my flow down to around maybe 30%, and I'm just going to build up on that lightly. So I can come in here and just carefully brush in the new eyes, and you'll see that they're in a slightly different spot. Alright, because he had a slightly different smile, and so as I said, it's not super ideal, but it kind of works. And now I can come in and get rid of most of the flare, and I'm revealing everything that's underneath, and I've kept the glasses. It's kind of just like having no glass at all in front of the eyes, and that cleans it up nicely. And I'm going to come over here as well and just brush that back. Now with that flow set to the 30%, the more I brush, the more I reveal underneath, so it actually builds up that layer. And now what we've got is we've got someone wearing glasses, shot with flash, with the light at an angle that sort of doesn't lend itself to people who wear glasses, and I've managed to remove that flare. As I said, it's not ideal, it's a bit of extra work, but it's one of those things that you might want to sort of keep in your bag of tricks for that person that you just can't seem to light whatever way you use, you just can't get the right light there. So there they are, that's that shot there. Alright, so the final way of removing flare from glasses is to use the clone stamp. And again, not ideal, but this will get you out of those situations where you just didn't notice because the flare isn't that super noticeable. So we've got this image. This was actually taken by Gustavo, and there's just this tiny little bit of a reflection. This can often also be from the fill board or the reflector that's just under there used to fill in the light, and it's just very subtle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this image in Photoshop. So it's right click, come down to edit in Photoshop. All right, and that image will now come up, open up in Photoshop. So I'm going to come in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this area here over onto this area here. Now this will also work even if you've got maybe some flare that's going over the eye. All right, so what essentially I'm doing is I'm going to clone from here and place it onto here. Now there's a couple of issues when you're doing this. The right eye is different to the left eye, so it's going to look odd if you do that. But the beauty of the clone stamp is you can actually reverse it if you do it on an empty layer. So again, if you don't have your layers palette up, you just go down to Window and then click on Layers and it'll come up there. So here is my original layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new empty layer. So it's this little icon here. It looks like a sheet of paper with a fold. All right, so basically what I'm doing, if this was a photo, the empty layer is just like maybe I'm adding a sheet of tracing paper over the top. It's a non-destructive way to edit the image. So if I botch the whole job, I can just get rid of the layer and start again, and I haven't ruined my original file. And so it's a really handy way to adjust images. So I've got my empty layer selected. I'm going to come in here and choose my clone stamp, and my mode is normal. I'm going to have maybe medium hardness for this one. Now, the reason I'm not going with a super soft brush is I don't really need a super soft brush in this instance because I do want to capture the hard edges, and opacity 100%, and I'm going to have my flow also at 100% because all I want to do is essentially make a copy of this area and just place it over this area. Now it's going to look a little rough. The other thing is you want to tick aligned sample because that will follow along as you go, and basically we're going to create a clone of this side of the eye. So I'm going to start here by sampling that little edge there. So I'm holding down the Option key on a Mac or Alt on a PC, and I've now sampled that area, and you can see there that it's been selected. So I've actually got the edge of the glasses, and I can put that little edge wherever I want, but I'm just going to bring it over here over this other side of the image, and I'm just going to brush over that area. Now as you can see, it's looking super dodgy at the moment and wonky, but all I want essentially is to create a replica of that left eye. So camera right, all right, and that's what I have, and it's on its own little empty layer. So if I can toggle on and off, there it is. Now so far, not ideal. But here's the beauty of cloning in this way. When you're doing it on an empty layer, I can move this wherever I want, and I can also adjust it and transform it. So what I'm going to do is, because it's the opposite of the right eye, which is camera left, is the opposite, I'm going to flip it around horizontally. So now I've got something that could resemble the correct eye, but there's a couple of other things that have happened here. We've got a little bit of distortion because the model's head is slightly at an angle. So whereas this eye was being photographed dead square on, this other eye is photographed at an angle. So it's not ideal, but all I want to replace is this part under here, this area, and maybe part of the eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up as best I can, and the way I do that is I just reduce the opacity of the top layer and kind of just move it around. And a more precise way to, rather than using a mouse, or you might have a pen to retouch with, is you can use your up down arrows. So to do more precise movements. So I'm now pressing the up arrow and it's moving, I think it moves it like a pixel at a time, and it's a really good way, if you're not very steady with your hands, just to get that in place a bit more precisely. And what I'm trying to match is this bottom area with this bottom area, because it's this area here that I'm concerned with, and just making sure that I've sort of got the eyes lined up, but it's more about that little bottom part there. All right, so that's looking like it's a good match. I can now bring my opacity back up. Okay, so it's not looking fantastic. What I'm going to do now is add a layer mask to that. And I'm going to now hide this whole transformation that I've done, all my cloning, by hitting Command I. And now the cloning that I've done is now hidden under here. And now I can come back in with a soft brush and just brush this area, and it's going to reveal the cloning that I've just done, and I should be able to get a nice little exact copy of this clean area of skin where there isn't any flare. So I'm just going to choose my brush. I'm going to make sure that it's at 0 hardness, mode is normal, opacity 100%, and I'm going to bring my flow down to around 10%. And I'm coming in, I'm going to make sure that I've got my foreground colour set to white. And now I just simply brush in and brush the flare away. And I'm also managed to replicate the skin tone there, and also the way that the light is catching the eyes underneath there. And you get, I think, pretty good results with this. You're not getting any sort of artificial look. It looks quite realistic. So let's have a look. We've got the before and the after, just by simply replicating that area, flipping it around. So very handy thing to know about that clone stamp, that when you put it on an empty layer, you can change it any which way and make use of it that way.